The last chapter, I know you guys talked about it yesterday when I was off on my little fun and games. And at the same time, there's a lot to be talked about here. So let's keep back on chapter 15, the final chapter, how to outwit the 6 ghosts of fears and what your takeaways were. And guys, we didn't get this recorded yesterday that I know of. So you may even recap something you said yesterday. What do you have?
Where do you want to start?
Wherever you want in chapter 15. Knock yourself out, Celeste.
Well, I'm already moving in past all the different fears to it's a paragraph that says, an unsettled mind is helpless. Indecision makes an unsettled mind. Most individuals lack the willpower to reach decisions promptly and to stand by them. That's the part I'm hearing. And to stand by them after they have been made, even during normal business conditions. Wow.
Well, this whole decision piece means that we're done. It means the past. Again, as you guys, not all of you heard, I love seeing these fresh faces in here joining us. So I still want to recap and have a little fun with it. What does a pesticide do?
Kills.
Yeah, kills bugs, right? What's homicide? To kill others. Suicide, to kill oneself. Decide. It comes from the same Latin root. What does it really mean? It means to kill off every other option. They're dead. They're gone. They're behind you. And now this is the path. The biggest difference between those that live a high level of success and those that don't is successful people get the facts quickly, make a decision quickly, and then go to work to prove it was the right decision. By the way, a lot of times there was another decision that might have gotten them to the win faster, yet because they stayed, they got the win no matter what. That's what I want to see in you guys by decide. You're all in this room. You have made a decision to be in personal development, to continue to grow. Yep. So stay in that lane. Celeste, you've made a lot of glorious decisions this week. You and I have had some incredible conversations. Okay? That means we don't backtrack. That means damn the torpedoes, burn the boats. That's the path. Let's go. Julianne, client, Justin, in that order. What do you got?
I'm just going to piggyback on what Celeste said, because like she's talking about the paragraph at the end, near the end of the chapter. In the beginning of the chapter, I basically was looking at the same thing. Under the symptoms of fear of poverty, when he's going over indecision, doubt, worry, overcaution, procrastination, and under procrastination, because I'm the queen of procrastination, I think every report card I had said Julianne has so much potential if she wouldn't wait to the last minute. So yes, that's a word that has been put upon me since I was a wee one. And I put out, if I wasn't such a procrastinator, I've labeled myself that over and over and over again. And I've never really looked at it as all these little sneaky ways that the author mentions that creeps up. And I would have never put that under a fear of poverty. And so, but the way he lays it out, he mentions again the poem Bargaining for Life with a Penny. Instead of demanding prosperity. So procrastination, the habit of putting things off, that's our indecision. And indecision seems like such an innocent thing. Like, I'm going to wait it out. I'm going to examine, that paralysis of analysis when you actually perfect, it's finished beats perfect. But, we strive for perfect because we were always rewarded for being perfect, for getting straight A's, for having the right answers. So what I noticed in this that I was like, whoa, my whoa moment. So instead of demanding prosperity, opulence, riches, contentment, and happiness, planning what to do if and when overtaken by failure instead of burning all your bridges. That is, how many of us have backup plans? Oh, if this doesn't work out, I'll just do that. You have just set yourself up for failure. And I realized, I'm like, I've done this over and over and over again in my life. And, you know, I mean, even when I'm cooking, it's like, I make sure I have 2 meats thawed out in case I screw up one of them. I mean, I have a backup plan because in this, like, but the client, you laughing at me, but it's true. But it's simple things like that. You know, it's like, oh, well, what if I don't make my sales quota? What if I lose my job? I need to have this set up. You know, I don't know. To me, it's like having a backup plan I was always told that's what you should do. You should always have a backup plan. And here, what I'm learning is that having a backup plan holds me back from that main one that I really truly desire. And I'm like,
Do you know why? Do you know why, Julie?
Let her finish.
Go ahead. Go for it.
You are next up. So
and if I don't truly desire, I must not truly desire it. I must not have a strong enough why. So that's where
here's the fun part with these fears. You may have a strong enough why, and yet the fears are still holding you back. It's fun because you're talking about these backup plans, redundancy, alternative, and that plays into that indecision that we've talked about before. There's so many intriguing places people go because of these damn fears. And so I just challenge you to be looking for those, because you're right. You've got to get in a place, Julianne, where there's no other option. And you're right again that if you plan the backup, you're planning to fail. Leaving yourself no other option is an incredible way. Now, client, you had a other layer, plus you were next in line. What do you got, brother?
So I was just saying, hey, the reason why that backup, you have that backup plan and you can choose it sometimes is because you're literally giving your brain the authority to take that position. You're basically saying to your brain, hey, this is a backup plan just in case. So guess what your brain says? I have been told that this is a backup plan just in case. We're humans, which means our brains then go to work taking care of what we said we wanted it to do. It then develops a backup plan. However, we know the Russian proverb, if you chase 2 rabbits, how many do you get? None. So you're telling your brain to literally do something to secure a alternative outcome. It tries, it does not accomplish it. Wash, rinse, repeat. And it happens again and again. And then I'm sorry, go ahead, Russ.
I was going to drop 2 pieces on this though, client, because you used a very key word there, secure. Every one of you that chooses security over opportunity is falling into a fear position or a backup plan. Security is 100% based on fear. So how many times do you have the same opportunity, security versus opportunity? You got the same choice. You're choosing the safer and living a smaller life. And here's a piece of where it comes from, because go back to junior high, high school. If someone was part of the crowd that was, quote, not succeeding, what were some of the labels we put on them? Loser, stoner, ne'er-do-well if you go back to the 50s. And of course, we had the other group that exceeded beyond us. And what kind of labels and stories did we have? Teacher's pet, brown noser. We have had an entire crowd around us teaching us to be average. Your higher education taught you to do things standard and average. Should you have gone through that path? Taught you that security was the way to go. You go get a job, you do it for 40 years so you can get a retirement and live out the rest of your life average. And that is not how we play in this space. This is about opportunity. Guys, the only way you are going to succeed at a high level is to fail often, fail fast, and fail forward. And keep on the path, and magic will happen. Justin, you are next up, brother.
All right. I've got two things that I really like from this. So I'll deal with the first one and then look at the rest maybe at the end. We have time for money talks. So if I skip the first couple of paragraphs, I guess Westbrook Pegler put in the New York World Telegram, money is only clamshells or metal discs, scraps of paper. And there are treasures of the heart and soul which money cannot buy, but most people, being broke, are unable to keep this in mind and sustain their spirits. When a man is down and out on the street, unable to get any job at all, something happens to his spirit, which can be observed in the droop of his shoulders, the set of his hat, his walk, his gaze. He cannot escape the feeling of inferiority among people with regular employment, even though he knows they are definitely not his equal in character, intelligence, or ability. If you go, and I'm going to skip into the next section, talks about women concealing this despair or it not being evident in women. So it says women in the same predicament must be different. We somehow do not think women at all, considering the down and outers. They are scarce in the breadlines. They're rarely seen begging on the street, and they are not recognizable in crowds of the same plain signs which identify busted men. Of course, I do not mean shuffling bags in city streets, the opposite number of the confirmed male bums. I mean reasonably young, decent, and intelligent women. This last sentence really kind of made me think on this. There must be many of them, but their despair is not apparent. Maybe they kill themselves. And I was curious, as you were talking about pesticide and homicide and suicide, I don't imagine that, every broke gal has committed suicide, and that is why they weren't seeing them. And what's interesting about this, it really made me think, and I wonder, most of this book as I read it seems very applicable and very true today. I think this piece may be different because of the shift, in the roles, the gender roles, women working, two income households, single mothers. I would bet that this is one spot that's just totally different today than it was 100 years ago.
And I'd be open to the possibility, and I would say maybe. And yet I know a lot of mothers of small children who would prefer to be home. They're not working by choice, so they may justify it. They're working by necessity. Maybe they're chasing security. Maybe they don't believe that they can live that life. Maybe you never know. The fun part for me in this content is I'm looking at through the lens always of how we can apply it to today's culture, because almost all of it does. And there was fun when we got into that battle of the sexes 2-3 weeks ago on that chapter on sex. And it was interesting to see the different opinions come out, and people look at everything through their own story, through their filters, their deletions, their distortions. And really part of this conversation is to getting you guys to swap out those lenses. Be open to the possibility the way you see things, I wouldn't say is wrong. I would just say is not serving you. And if it's not serving you, how about we change that lens out to something that is? Because again, as I've shared with you before, we are all living a hallucination. We're living a hallucination of our own story, the own experience, and it's our own world. So why not choose, if we're going to live a hallucination, why not choose to make it a great one? What else you guys have from the content? Julianne, you're up. I see your mic's hot again.
Yeah, you mentioned, again, I'm just picking back off of people here that, so you mentioned two things. One was the lens that you're looking through. And I actually wrote in the margins, a 2020 lens is necessary. And that is back in the beginning of the chapter when he talks about this. The purpose of this chapter is to turn the spotlight of attention upon the cause and the cure of the 6 basic fears. Before we can master the enemy, we must know its name, its habits, and it's the place it abodes. As you read, analyze yourself carefully and determine which, if any, of the 6 common fears have attached themselves to you. There's different lenses that we put on, like you mentioned. There's rose-colored glasses. Sometimes a situation requires a rose-colored glass. But if you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're looking in rose-colored glasses, or you're using a Snapchat filter and you're going, hey, I look cute today. The lens is important. And the only person who controls the lens for which we see is ourselves. And you said, what serves you? I wrote that down on a couple pages later, where this fact may be explained in the statement that every human being has the ability to completely control their own mind. With this control, obviously, every person may open his mind to the tramp thought impulses, which are then released by other brains. He talks about the ether a lot, talking about what's around us. We can catch it, basically. Or you can close the doors tightly and admit only the thought impulses of his own choice. So I put here, decide what serves you. And that is what you let in. You have to be carefully guarded. Like he talks about the depression. The crash happened, but it was the thoughts that people were letting in, the panic and everything, that actually he feels is what actually caused the Great Depression, 6 years. Client mentioned yesterday about how it's economics is basically energy flow. It's a mindset, and that Great Depression, the author completely agreed with them.
Yeah, it's so interesting, this whole group think concept, which is really what showed up for the Depression. There was this story. Think about the group think that we dealt with in 2020 with the pandemic and with COVID, and how people behaved based on their stories, some of which are still living that same story today. And is it true? Is it 100% true? Always a great filter. Now, one other I want to throw on there, though, because you brought it up, Julianne, rose-colored glasses. What's the downside of wearing those most of the time? Of seeing what's right. By the way, the history on that and where that came from, it's kind of fun to look up. Rose-colored glasses eliminate your ability, or any creature's ability, to see blood. That's where it came from. So chickens, if they see another chicken with blood, they will peck on it and damage. You go Google chicken glasses. There were people that were selling little glasses for your chicken flock that you would put on them so they wouldn't peck each other if somebody got injured. I'm just going to challenge you. That big piece of that is that optimism of looking for what's right rather than what's wrong. Having that filter that you're always going to see where the win is rather than where the risk is. Yeah, we should be aware of some risk, yet more often than not, because we focus on that, we create it. And if we just focus on the win and keep working on that, there's the opportunity side again. Magic happens. Miss Carrie, you're up, my dear.
So this one part, it says you can easily protect yourself against highway robbers because the law provides organized cooperation for your benefit. But the 7th basic evil is more difficult to master. it strikes when you are not aware of its presence. So it says that the seventh, the evil is a state of mind. And then it goes on to say, sometimes it enters through the wellness words of one's own relatives, and in other times it boxes from within through one's own mental attitude. Always, it is as deadly as poison, even though it may not kill as quickly. I thought that really stood out.
Yeah.
Still a poison, still we were talking about the sides, right? Decide, suicide, homicide, whatever it is, it just kills throughout your entire life until you're physically gone.
I so wish there was a side about negativity, about hatred, about anger, because all of those negative emotions that you, by the way, have total control over. Remember that your programming leads to your thoughts. Your thoughts are what trigger your feelings. Feelings are really why you take the actions you take. You may think it's logic, yet it's feelings that generate the action. Actions give you results. Results come back as more programming. Programming, thoughts, feelings, actions, results. And
Right.
these negative feelings, which start with your own thoughts, your own judgments, are just like drinking poison.
Right. And we
When
learn
you're
that.
sitting there, somebody cuts you off in traffic and you get pissed off and you're angry at them, what does that do to them?
Absolutely nothing.
And yet, what are you
Nothing.
doing to yourself?
Yeah.
And
So-
again, just in that particular one, my story, anybody who is behaving aggressively in traffic, my story is, man, that they're off to the hospital to see their firstborn child or firstborn grandchild. Now
Yeah.
it's a totally different energy. I'm rooting for them. I also want them to be safe. I want you to get there. Let's get you safe, but I'm not mad at them. So what, they cut me off. I might do the same thing in that circumstance.
Yep.
You get to
So-
choose the story.
Yeah. So let me just say one more thing. So then we were talking about the, for the worry and the this and the that. So, and your fear, well, that's where anxiety comes from, right? It just kind of slowly builds like that. So one of the things we were talking about the other day, I think Julianne was there, that as long as the root cause is, the fear, right? And we learn those fears. They're not just inbred in us. So then you have to take the root cause, and then you have to worry. You have to address that. And then I said something in the chat about how when I had, or I still have it, but not half as much, I learned that instead of worrying about all the things ahead of time, my dad was always like, well, do you have this? Do you have that? Are you prepared? Is basically what he was saying. And as I became less resistant to what he was saying, and I was doing those things, I found a lot less anxiety and fear and worry. So then those were the natural things that built better habits to therefore not have it. If you're not going through the very root cause and bottom of it, you're never going to get through the fear. To be able to hear your sixth sense.
Absolutely. And so, Miss Amber, by the way, I saw your mic come on and go off again. And I'm also seeing some chat stuff going on. So let's bring it into the room. Yeah, it means you have to unmute again.
I wanted unmute. There it goes. Okay. No, I was just saying that totally preventable. And I had somebody there was an article about it in Austin, this road rage thing. And it's just, he was on his way to pick up his kid and pulled over on the side of the road, got into a fist fight, and got pushed into traffic. I mean, it's just, yeah, it kind of hit a little nerve when you started talking about that. But it people putting themselves in those situations, it's just baffling to me that when it can be prevented.
And I want to make sure all of you always are putting yourself in great situations. So thank you for that, Amber, because again, that a whole series of decisions
Yes.
led to that spot. By the way, one side of the equation, either side of the equation had 100% control of that situation going into it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I go, and us in a friend group, we go between the emotions of being mad and being sad because it was totally preventable. So yeah.
Yeah. So, by the way, a lot of this stuff is presentable or preventable. A lot of this is perception. So I put in the chat, because when this comes up, this anxiety, this fear, this story, I've got a great YouTube video that's your homework. Many of you have seen it before. Many of you have not. Kelly McGonigal is a stress psychologist. She is talking about anxiety and stress in this. And it's a powerful, different view that the science supports.